The afternoon heat pressed down on verdant colony like a heavy blanket as Marcus Webb wiped the sweat from his weathered face. 6 months he'd been living on the edges of civilization. 6 months since he'd buried his wife Rebecca and the future they'd planned together. The wilderness of this alien world suited him now. It asked nothing, expected nothing, judged nothing. He'd been checking his snare traps when he heard it. The rhythmic scrape of stone against stone, deliberate and oddly musical. Marcus paused mid-step, his hand instinctively moving to the plasma cutter on his belt-old habits from his days doing salvage work in contested zones. The sound came from beyond a cluster of crimson-leafed trees, in a clearing he'd passed through a dozen times before. Curiosity won over caution. Marcus picked his way through the undergrowth, careful to make minimal noise. When he emerged from the tree line, he stopped so abruptly he nearly tripped over an exposed root. A woman knelt beside a half-built structure, carefully fitting stones together with surprising precision. But she wasn't human. Her skin held the soft purple hue of twilight, and her hair fell in waves of deep indigo down her back. She wore simple clothes that revealed the unmistakable curve of pregnancy-advanced pregnancy. If he was any judge, Marcus had seen Valeri before at the colonial trade posts. They were one of the dozen alien species that shared this sector, known for their artistic sensibilities and complex social hierarchies. But he'd never seen one out here, alone and apparently building a home with nothing but her bare hands. She grunted softly with effort as she tried to lift a stone nearly half her size. Her arms trembled, and Marcus saw her bite her lip in frustration. The stone slipped, and she barely pulled her foot back in time. "You're going to hurt yourself," Marcus called out, immediately regretting how his voice shattered the quiet. The woman spun with remarkable speed for someone so heavily pregnant. And suddenly she had a wicked-looking blade in her hand. Her amber eyes were wide, pupils narrowing to slits in the bright light. Marcus raised both hands slowly. "Easy. I'm not here to cause trouble." "Then leave," she said. Her voice had a melodic quality, each word flowing into the next like water over stones. "This place is claimed. I can see that." Marcus nodded toward her construction. "You've got good instincts for foundation work. Drainage is going to be a problem when the rains come, though." Her eyes narrowed. "What do you know of building?" "More than you'd think. I was an architect before." He trailed off, pushing away memories of the life he'd designed for Rebecca, the nursery he'd never finished. "I know what I'm doing with structures. And I know you're going to bring that whole thing down on yourself if you keep stacking stones without proper support." She studied him for a long moment, her free hand moving protectively to her swollen belly. Finally, she lowered the blade slightly, though she kept it ready. "I need no help from a human." "Maybe not," Marcus agreed. "But your baby might appreciate having a roof that doesn't collapse." Something flickered across her face, fear, perhaps, or anger. "You know nothing of my situation." "True enough." Marcus took a careful step forward, then another when she didn't object. He examined her work, genuinely impressed despite its rough state. "But I know construction, and I know determination when I see it. You've been at this for days, haven't you?" She didn't answer, but her shoulders sagged slightly. Up close, Marcus could see the exhaustion in her features, the way her hands shook when she thought he wasn't looking. "My name's Marcus Webb," he offered. "I live about an hour's walk east of here. Came out this way to check my traps." He gestured at the stone she'd been struggling with. "How about I help you place that one, and you can decide if you want me to come back?" The woman regarded him with those striking amber eyes, and Marcus felt an unexpected flutter in his chest, the first stirring of anything beyond grief and numbness in half a year. "Sienna," she said finally. "I am called Sienna. Nice to meet you, Sienna." Marcus moved toward the large stone, testing its weight. "So, what are we building here? Living space, storage, or both?" "Shelter," she replied, her voice barely above a whisper. Safety. Something in her tone made Marcus look up sharply. Safety from what? Sienna's hand moved to her belly again, a protective gesture he recognized with a pang. Rebecca had done the same thing during her pregnancy, before the accident that took them both. From those who would take my child, Sienna said, and the raw fear in her voice made Marcus's decision for him. Then we'd better make sure these walls are strong enough to keep them out, he said, rolling up his sleeves. Tell me your plan, and I'll make it happen. For the first time, something like hope crossed Sienna's face. You would help me? Without knowing why I hide, or what I have done. Marcus thought of Rebecca, of the nursery that would remain forever empty, of all the chances he'd lost. Everyone deserves a chance to protect their family, he said quietly. And everyone deserves to not be alone. They worked in companionable silence as the afternoon wore on, Sienna directing while Marcus provided the muscle for the heavier work. He found himself stealing glances at her, the graceful way she moved despite her condition, the focused intensity when she examined each stone before placing it, the soft humming sound she made when concentrating Dot by the time the twin suns began their descent toward the horizon. 4 walls stood where there had been only one before. It wasn't finished, wasn't even close, but it was progress. Real, tangible progress. You'll need support beams before you add a roof, Marcus said, surveying their work. And proper waterproofing. The seasonal storms here are no joke. Sienna stood in what would be the doorway, one hand resting on the stone. In the golden light of evening, her violet skin seemed to glow from within, and her indigo hair caught the breeze. Marcus found himself staring, his heart beating faster than the physical work warranted. Will you return tomorrow? She asked, not quite meeting his eyes. To help with the beams? Marcus picked up his pack, surprised by how much he wanted to say yes, by how much the thought of leaving felt wrong. If you want me to, I. Sienna hesitated, and when she finally looked at him, there was something vulnerable and open in her expression. Yes, I would like that. As Marcus walked back toward his homestead in the gathering dusk, he realized he was actually smiling, for the first time in months. Behind him, he could hear Sienna still working, the sound of stone on stone like a heartbeat in the wilderness. He didn't know her story yet, didn't understand what she was running from, or why. But he knew one thing with certainty. He would be back tomorrow, and the day after. For as long as she needed him, Dot, the wilderness didn't seem quite so lonely anymore. Marcus arrived at the clearing just after dawn, his pack heavy with tools he'd salvaged from his workshop. The morning mist still clung to the ground, giving everything a dreamlike quality. Sienna was already awake, sitting on a flat stone near her shelter, braiding her indigo hair with careful, practiced movements. She looked up as he approached, and something in her amber eyes softened. You came back, said I would. Marcus set down his pack, pulling out a portable saw and measuring tape. Brought breakfast, too, if you're interested. They shared dried fruit and protein bars in comfortable silence, watching the mist burn away under the rising suns. Marcus found himself acutely aware of every detail, the way Sienna's fingers moved as she ate, the gentle rise and fall of her breathing, the occasional flutter of movement across her belly. Your child is active this morning, he observed. Sienna's hand moved to the spot where the movement had been most visible. Always at dawn and dusk. The healer I saw before I fled said it was unusual, this level of activity so early. You saw a healer? Marcus asked carefully, not wanting to push but curious about her circumstances. Briefly, before they discovered what I carried. Sienna's voice grew distant. Before they decided my baby was an abomination that should never be born. Marcus's jaw tightened. That's a hell of a word to use for a child. It is their word, not mine. She looked down at her belly with such tenderness that Marcus felt his chest constrict. My people, the Valari, have strict protocols about genetic compatibility. Unions between species are permitted for pleasure, even encouraged for diplomatic relations. But conception? She trailed off, pain flickering across her features. Is forbidden, Marcus finished quietly. Worse than forbidden. It is considered a genetic crime, a pollution of Valari purity. Sienna's amber eyes met his, and he saw centuries of cultural weight behind them. When they discovered I was pregnant, they gave me two choices: termination or exile after the child was taken for study. Study, Marcus repeated, the word tasting bitter. Like a lab specimen. Precisely. Sienna stood, moving toward the shelter, as if she needed something to do with her hands. So I chose a third option. I ran. Marcus joined her, beginning to measure for support beams. What about the father? The silence stretched so long he thought she wouldn't answer. When she finally spoke, her voice was thick with grief. Torin was Meridian, from the moon colonies. We met during a cultural exchange, and She paused, searching for words. Your language doesn't have the proper term. It was more than love, deeper than bonding. It was recognition of souls. I understand, Marcus said softly, thinking of Rebecca. I lost my wife 8 months ago. We had that same recognition. Sienna turned to him, surprise evident on her face. You are widowed? Car accident. She was 6 months pregnant. The words still hurt, even after all this time. One moment we were planning our future, the next ... He made a helpless gesture. Gone, both of them. I grieve with you, Sienna said, and the formal words somehow carried more weight than simple sympathy. Torin died 4 months ago. When the Valari enforcers discovered our relationship, they couldn't punish me. I'm from a prominent family, but he had no such protection. They executed him for the crime of loving me. Marcus felt rage kindle in his chest. They killed him for that? For that? And for creating this child? Her hand rested protectively on her belly. They would have terminated the pregnancy immediately, but I fled before they could. I've been moving ever since, staying ahead of the hunters they sent after me. Is that why you're building out here? To hide? To give my baby a chance. Sienna's voice broke slightly. Even if they find me, even if they take me, perhaps I can give birth first. Perhaps the child can escape what they would do to it in their laboratories. Marcus set down his tools and stepped closer. Not quite touching, but near enough that he could feel the subtle coolness that radiated from her skin. What if you didn't have to run anymore? What if you had help? You are one human, Marcus Webb. But her eyes held desperate hope. What could you do against Valari enforcers? Maybe nothing. Maybe everything. He thought of his homestead, the reinforced structure he'd built with paranoid precision after Rebecca's death. My place is defensible, shielded, and I know this territory better than any off-world hunter. If they're tracking you, we make it harder. We make you disappear. Why would you do this? Sienna asked, her amber eyes searching his face. You owe me nothing. You risk everything. Marcus thought about that, about the empty months he'd spent in isolation, the hollow feeling that had consumed him since Rebecca died. Looking at Sienna now, seeing her fierce determination to protect her unborn child, he felt something shift inside him, a crack in the wall he'd built around his grief. Because no one should face this alone, he said finally. And because ... He hesitated, uncertain how to articulate the connection he felt, this pull toward her that defied logic. Because I see you, Sienna. I see your strength and your fear and your love for that baby. And I can't walk away from that. The air between them seemed to shimmer with unspoken possibilities. Sienna reached out slowly, her cool fingers touching his sun-warmed hand. The contrast in temperature sent a shiver through both of them. Your people and mine are so different, she whispered. And yet ... And yet here we are. Marcus finished. They stood like that for a long moment, hands joined, before the practical needs of the day reasserted themselves. They worked through the morning, Marcus cutting support beams from fallen timber, while Sienna continued her meticulous stonework. The shelter grew more solid, more real, with each passing hour dot around midday. Marcus noticed Sienna wincing, her hand pressed to her lower back. "You should rest. There is too much to do. There's always too much to do. Rest anyway." He guided her to sit in the shade, then disappeared into the forest, returning 20 minutes later with large, broad leaves and his water container. "What are you doing?" Sienna asked as he soaked the leaves. "Something my grandmother taught me." Marcus knelt behind her. "May I?" When she nodded, he gently pressed the cool, damp leaves against her lower back. Sienna gasped at the sensation, then sighed with relief. "Your grandmother was wise," she murmured. "She raised 5 kids and helped birth a dozen grandchildren. She knew all the tricks." Marcus kept his touch professional, but he couldn't help noticing the elegant curve of Sienna's spine, the way her indigo hair caught the light when it slipped over her shoulder. "Tell me about your wife," Sienna said quietly. "If it doesn't pain you too much." Marcus was silent for a moment, then began to speak. He told her about Rebecca, her laugh, her stubbornness, the way she hummed while cooking. He told her about the house they'd planned to build, the nursery he'd started painting before the accident. As he spoke, he realized the memories hurt less than they had before, as if sharing them with Sienna somehow made them bearable. "She sounds extraordinary," Sienna said when he finished. She was. Marcus moved to sit beside her, their shoulders nearly touching. "Torin must have been special too, for you to risk everything." "He was gentle," Sienna said, her voice soft with memory. "My people value strength and dominance, but Torin was gentle. He saw me not as a political connection or a genetic asset, but as myself. Simply Sienna." "That's all anyone should be seen as," Marcus said. "Simply themselves." Sienna turned to look at him, and the intensity in her gaze made his breath catch. "You see me that way?" "I feel it when you look at me." "Yes," Marcus admitted, his voice rough. "I do." The moment stretched between them, charged with possibilities neither had expected. Sienna's hand found his, and this time the touch felt different, not just comfort, but connection, attraction, something that transcended the grief they both carried. "This is unwise," Sienna whispered, even as she leaned closer. "We barely know each other. I am still mourning Torin. You are still mourning Rebecca. We are different species, different worlds." "I know," Marcus said, his eyes never leaving hers. "I know all of that. And yet I haven't felt alive since Rebecca died. Not until I saw you building this shelter, fighting for your child's future. You make me feel again, Sienna. Everything fear and hope. And this pull toward you that I can't explain." Sienna's cool fingers touched his face, tracing the line of his jaw with wonder. "In my culture, we believe souls recognize each other across lifetimes, across species even. When Torin died, I thought I would never feel that recognition again. But with you—" Her voice trembled. "Marcus, what is happening between us?" "I don't know," he admitted. "But I don't want to ignore it just because it's complicated or unexpected or doesn't make logical sense." They sat in a dappled shade, the half-built shelter standing silent witness to something neither could name, but both felt deeply. Around them, the alien forest sang its strange songs, and overhead, the twin suns continued their eternal dance across the sky. "Help me finish the shelter," Sienna said finally. "Stay close while I still carry this child. And then we will see what future we might build together. If any." "That's enough for now," Marcus agreed, though his heart raced with the unspoken promise of more. They worked until dusk. the shelter taking shape around them like a physical manifestation of the bond forming between them. As Marcus prepared to leave for the night, Sienna caught his hand. "Tomorrow," she said. It wasn't a question. "Tomorrow," Marcus confirmed. "And every day after, for as long as you need me." As he walked back through the darkening forest, Marcus felt the weight of grief shift on his shoulders. It didn't disappear, grief never truly did, but alongside it now sat something else. Hope, purpose, the fragile beginning of something that might, impossibly, be love again. Behind him, Sienna stood in the doorway of her growing shelter, one hand on her belly, watching until he disappeared into the trees. And for the first time since Torin's death, she allowed herself to imagine a future that held more than just survival. The wilderness held its breath, waiting to see what would grow from the foundation these two broken souls were building together.